ban them all. Ooh, they say let's ban them all. To keep it safe, they try to regulate. They can't stand that some choose to always have that choice. So if the blame falls on the gun of all your slayers, then who takes the fall? Yeah, yes, the lawyers, they say let's ban them all. Ooh, they say let's ban them all. So if the blame falls on the gun of all your slayers, then who takes the fall? And yes, the lawyers, they say let's ban them all. Yeah, so now slayers, they won't take the fall. And poor lawyers, they'll try to save us all. Ooh, they'll try to save us all. They'll try to save us all. No good can come from this. They'll try to save us all.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rock Pal Report podcast live on YouTube. Welcome, everybody. How you doing? Oh, that moose head, Chris. It's just so cold when it hits your lips. Oh, guys, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I am your host, Buffalo Bill season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. Welcome to the Rock Pal Report live on YouTube. We're here hanging out on another Thursday night in the middle of summer, and I got to tell you, Chris, I'm fascinated by how you've survived this long in the corporate world.
Yeah, still going.
Still going, still have a job, still gainfully employed.
We did mention that, might have been last week, that I did have a job interview that eventually came with an offer, except it is on third shift. So I will have to politely decline the offer and stay corporate Chris.
What's tough about this time of year, corporate Chris, oh my God, it's the funniest thing picturing you in a Slack chat. This time of year is awful when it comes to just day-to-day like TV watching, because I found out that with no sports, I don't watch TV. The majority of what I take in is sporting events or it's sporting adjacent programming. And now the problem is this time of year, there's nothing. I mean, for those of you who like baseball, first of all, I apologize. My condolences to you and your family. I don't know what happened to you as a child that turned you into this person or thing, but televised baseball is just a drag. It's okay to have on in the background if I'm at a bar, or if I'm at home and it's just noise that you want to throw on in another room while you're entertaining people, fine. We'll throw a baseball game on. I can't bring myself to care about 9 innings and 3.5 hours of baseball, Chris. What's the number of beers you have to watch in order to watch a sport you don't care about?
0.
Really?
I can watch anything that involves competition. And I will say, like, during the season, when I mean season of sport, which is end of August till probably February, because then you cut out football, pro football, and college football. And then for me, it's just hockey. I don't care about the NBA. But, I'll pay for, I use Sling TV. That's how I do my television. And then I'll cancel it. And then I just, like, this week realized of, like, how much shit I watch on YouTube. Like, YouTube is the new TV.
It's funny to me when I think about sports, because Kyle the beer guy, he says he's stopping to get beer for us tonight. Chris, we're blessed. The dogs have blessed us.
Yeah, Kyle read my address off that box last week, and
which is hilarious. I like how you got doxxed on your own podcast and it's your fault. Awesome.
no, I gave it to him.
So here's what I love. Summertime, it's like I Googled it. I had to Google what sports are worth watching in the summer of 2025. And I was produced a list. Wimbledon, the Wimbledon Championships, the Tour de France, and the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Notice they didn't say Major League Baseball. They just said the All-Star, which I think is problematic, and it underscores my opinion of baseball. Also, when you think about what these other sports are, guys, I think if you're watching this podcast, you're like us in the sense that I tell my wife constantly, I tell all my friends, if you put a drink in my hand, I can do anything. I can go anywhere. I can watch anything. I will subject myself to anything. And you know where that comes from, Chris? The ethos of my life is based around, I found this, Doug Stanhope had a whole bit a long time ago in his comedy stand-up called Beer Hall Push. And he was talking about people who have sober good times and how brave you have to be to have a sober good time. He's like, the stars have to just align for you. The waitress has to be on her game. The cook can't be fighting with his wife tonight. All of your friends have to show up and their wives can't be having a bad day, or they can't be fighting with each other in the car 5 minutes before they show up. He's like, all of these things have to happen. He goes, meanwhile, me, I just pour booze over whatever mundane thing I'm doing and it becomes fun. And that's a lot of how I feel a lot of the time, especially when it comes to summertime sporting events, because there's like I said, baseball, I can't get into it. But if you told me, Chris, that, hey, the U.S. Open's going to happen and guys are going to play tennis, I have zero interest in tennis. I don't know any of the players' names. I know Rafael Nadal. I know that there was a bald guy named Andre Agassi. I remember him. And I sometimes get golf players confused with tennis players. That's how little I care about either sport.
Did you not watch the U.S. Open golf?
Nope.
It was riveting. Only one player finished below par.
My father-in-law was there. It was on at my house. I watched none of it. I saw it. I acknowledged that golf was a thing people were doing and that the weather looked bad. Otherwise, I absorbed nothing. It bounces off me like a dodgeball. And I feel like if you put 2 beers in my hand, though, I can sit there in that living room and I can watch that golf for hours, as long as you keep the beers coming. That's summertime sporting to me. But why? If you live in a place like Buffalo, New York, would you do that to yourself? You should be outside absorbing the fact that we are literally living. Oh, my God, Roy Collins with NASCAR? I feel like Jeremy Piven in PCU. When he goes, wait, he's like, what do you major in? Sanskrit, 1,000-year-old dead language? This is Latin. That's all I got for you. Next. And he's handing out like finals, like the whatever you call them. And then the guy comes up and he goes, what'd you major in? He goes, gym. He goes, gym, you get out of here. And he almost fights the guy. As soon as I saw NASCAR in the comments of my podcast, NASCAR is not a sport. It's not only not a sport, you don't have to be athletic to do it. Guys drive in a circle. Yes. Does it take balls? Of course. You're driving 250 miles an hour. Chris, what's the fastest you're willing to drive on a public road?
So in high school, me and my brother are 2.5 years apart. So when I was a freshman in high school, he was a senior, and you would have to go down this road to our neighborhood in Georgia, and it was nothing on the road. So my brother, that's happened all the time. We would get up to like 100 miles an hour, and then we would both lean out the window, and then we would recite that line from Ace Ventura. Hey, Ace, you got any more of that gum? It's none of your damn business, Dan. We would repeat that, going like 100 miles an hour.
You guys are idiots.
Yeah.
I just remember my getting a speeding ticket when I was 18 and I was a freshman in college, where I was doing 111 miles an hour, and the cop who pulled me over got me out of the car. It's the broad daylight. He got me out, Immediately, it was just, sir, get out of the car. And then pulled me to the back of the car, kind of looked at me, we're talking, and he goes, "You're sober, aren't you?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm sober." He goes, "Okay, so you're just fat and stupid." I was like, oh, shit, shots fired from the sheriff, who is fired up. He goes, if I put pen to paper and put down 111 miles an hour, you lose your license like that. You're hoofing it everywhere. And then he looks at me and goes, "Although you might be," he goes, "you could probably use it." And I go, fuck, I really made this cop mad.
You know, in 0506, the girl I was seeing, she got me tickets to Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals between Buffalo and Carolina.
Okay.
So we drove out from Atlanta to Raleigh to go to Game 5 was on a Sunday night. So we got up Monday to drive back to Atlanta, and because she's from the South, she enjoyed NASCAR, not like as a lay fan. So there was a race at Charlotte on that Sunday. So we drove by. We had to stop in Charlotte, and she wanted to go see the Speedway. It looks like the Charlotte Motor Speedway looks like a fucking football stadium. And I couldn't tell you the amount of Pabst Blue Ribbon cans I saw just laying out around the grounds. It's Monday. The race was probably 20 hours post-race, and nobody's cleaned up yet because Charlotte is a shithole.
I don't know about that. I think you're painting with a broad brush, but I will say it is funny. It did make me laugh. Steve Noble in the comments, nothing better than a beer, hot charcoal in the grill, and sports on TV. If I can do all three of those things at the same time, I'll never come inside. I would just tell my wife, I live out here now. I'm going to pitch a 10 by 10 and I'm going to sleep under it in a hammock. We're done here. Move on. The children will find a new father. They'll find a new role model with better teeth. I'll be out here in the yard. God. So a lot's been happening, right? When you think about the Buffalo Bills at a time when there's nothing going on, you know, there's been a lot of things said and done that kind of give you, earlier tonight, Chris and I recorded a show about the top 10 players that we think I think will shape the 2025 season for the Buffalo Bills. And that was born of Chris sending me a text literally yesterday because there's so little to talk about at this time of year. It makes podcasting very difficult. With that said, sometimes topics get handed to you, and it's a lot of fun.
Like being at the draft on the radio right off the bat.
So what I love is that once again, Brandon Beane's name has come up on the radio. This time not for something he said, but just his general demeanor. And so once again, it was WGR 550 at the middle of something that's it's not grabbed it didn't grab national headlines, although it has been talked about widely, and I think it's worth looking into. Chris, do you have the audio queued up? If you could treat our listeners with the audio from WGR 550, Shope and the Bulldog in the afternoon talking to PFF's Sam Monson.
By the way, Brandon Beane, I think, might be like the most sensitive general manager in the entire NFL. And this is not just because of that. Like, now that I don't work at PFF, I can tell stories. But, like, PFF had to change the way they applied grading to free agents because Brandon Beane called up one day, butthurt that we criticized the Matt Khalil signing.
Oh, wow. That's going back, but
had to change is strong.
Yeah.
I mean, he threatened to pull business. Like, he was big mad about that.
Wow.
There you go, Sam Monson, WGR, Shope and the Bulldog.
There's a couple things. First of all, Chris hit the first one on the head. Mike Shope really let that one go. And Bulldog made an allusion to wow, that's a strong statement to make. You're kind of, but neither host really pressed the guest to go any deeper. Chris, you listened to the entire segment. And
Yeah, because it came from listening to the Brandon Beane wide receiver thing with Joe and Jeremy. I was like, I saw the clip GR put out, and then I listened to it on my own, and I thought there was more to the story. This, I listened. I agreed with GR's production team that put it out. It was on point, and I texted you. I was like, the fact that they didn't go deeper on this, they just brushed it off, and Shope went to some other bullshit question about the Chiefs. I would be like, whoa, hold the phone. What? Can we get more detail? What did he do? What was his tone? what did you have against Matt Khalil back then? Even though this is Beane is AGM at this point in Carolina. But like, I go deeper into it. That's not something you just move on from.
Well, and what I love is he's like, oh, he might be the most sensitive general manager, but at the time, like, what year was he talking about there?
I think it was 17, 18.
Okay. So it was right around the time that he was going to, Matt Khalil. When did Matt Khalil sign? Go look at that.
2017, he signed with...
So it's probably one of those things, if he worked under Dave Gettleman and still felt, March 2017. So technically, Brandon Beane was still an employee. He was still an employee on March 10th because he didn't take over for Doug Whaley until after the draft that year.
Yeah.
So so first of all, this thing's like an onion. It all stinks, and I'm going to peel back some of the layers on it. First of all, when you're talking about, this guy just came at me. First of all, he's an assistant GM at the time, not a full-fledged GM. I think that the way Monson portrayed that is kind of... I think it's disingenuous because he's like, that was a really sensitive guy. No, what you did was you really, as an assistant general manager, you look at Terrence Gray, who just newly got promoted after being our head of pro personnel. I bet you Brandon Beane did a lot of work to try to get that move to happen and get Gettleman to sign off on that while he was the GM there. And so when you go out there and pan something that a guy who has his finger on the button does, first of all, I don't think you understand what people who have authority and power at their disposal are like. Is Sam Monson shocked that somebody who has their finger on the button called up and said, hey, take that down? Yeah. Take that down or else. Have you ever met anybody with any kind of political influence whatsoever?
I'd call Sam Monson sensitive.
We're blocked out. The reason, guys, when I tweeted out the link,
it's from me. I'm the reason that we're blocked by Sam Monson.
Let me say this first.
I called him a nerd.
I tweeted. I captioned Sam Monson. I tweeted at him as we released the link for tonight's live show on Twitter, knowing full well he won't see it because we're blocked. And it's hilarious that we're blocked because what did you make fun of him for, Chris?
I don't know, something. I called him a nerd, and then he blocked us. Call him Brandon Beane. You're sensitive.
Who's sensitive
I called you
now?
a nerd.
You blocked us on Twitter over being called a nerd? Okay, yep. But he's the most sensitive person. Gotcha. Here's what I don't like about that entire conversation, though. One, the hosts on the radio do nothing to challenge the guy when he says something disparaging about a guy who comes on your radio station. He's a regular guest. You have two regular guests, right? You have Sam Monson, who does regular spots with the Afternoon Drive show. You have the Buffalo Bills GM, who will occasionally grace the airwaves post-draft, before before a training camp. He'll sit down with the WGR tent and he'll do a spot. A part of me questions whether or not they understand what building acrimony unnecessarily is like.
You're missing the big picture, the big point here. Mm-hmm. Not only does Beane frequent these shows, the Buffalo Bills games are played on their airwaves.
Yeah. It's a weird position to take where you're like, hey, this guy's going to, and Chris, maybe not getting into it with Shope's way of being like, look, I don't want to open this can of worms. I'm not trying to defend him in this. What I'm saying is when you're conducting an interview like that and someone says something that's disparaging to someone who is like, this is a conflict of business interest and personal interest from Mike Shope. If this guy comes on to his show and trashes your GM and it gets back to him and he really is as sensitive as you guys are trying to portray him to be, he might feel a certain way about that and it might not be good for you. So him not delving any deeper into it might actually have been the smartest thing for Mike Shope and, Bulldog, Chris Parker there to do in the moment. Do you agree?
Yeah, if I'm a producer at commercial, I would hit that button that connects to the the room there, because producers got their own room. Press a button. I would go, what the fuck are you doing? You didn't want to. You had Sam Monson on who called Beane sensitive, and you don't want to. You got to press the issue there. Like, there could have been I would have said.
As someone who's worked in the booth,
yes,
you know what that's like.
Yeah, I would have said, in this day and age, you missed on an opportunity where we could have had a viral clip. Now, the clip, I would say, within the Bills community did go viral, but you could have done better if you pressed Sam Monson on, what did he say? What was his tone? Because Sam Monson said he called up So he used a landline phone, I would assume, to call Sam Monson and yell at him. What did he say?
Here's the thing. Here's what I love. I like picturing, and I know that this isn't how it happened, but I have this vision in my head now when I hear this story of like Brandon Beane just goes to the PFF website and just looks up the customer service number and calls and then has to choke his way up that corporate horseshit ladder. Like, hey, I know you're just some peon in the call center. I need you to transfer me to somebody else. I'm GM Brandon Beane. And he just like AGM Brandon Beane, and he just works his way up the ladder until finally he's like, are you the guy I'm supposed to be yelling at about this? Good. I think that it's one of those things, right? Now, first of all, this is the second time he's been kind of derided for being overly sensitive. You know, his attack on WGR's Jeremy White, the morning drive show, when he came on and made national headlines because he ripped the radio host. And you start to see this thing of people saying, whoa, that guy's sensitive and he's this and he's that. Okay. So Sam Monson's now kind of piling on that. And how comfortable do you think he is telling that story now that that narrative already kind of exists?
I think he's very comfortable because Brandon Beane wasn't there to defend himself.
And I also think
that's how nerds work.
And I think that if Brandon Beane hadn't had the Jeremy White incident 2 months ago, none of this would have carried any weight, and Monson probably wouldn't even have said it. But because it's a thing now of like, oh, well, Brandon Beane's sensitive with the media, Monson feels empowered in an arena where he knows that guy's not there and he knows neither guy in the radio is going to challenge him. He steps up and says it. Now, here's a question I have. Is Brandon Beane being a sensitive guy a bad thing? And I think it's a question that a lot of people should ask. Like, having a sensitive GM, is this the worst thing in the world? You know, when Monson says it, you can tell he's saying it with negative connotations. Like, oh, he's big mad, which is something children say, and he's too old to be using that verbiage.
I believe he used butt hurt.
Okay, so when a grown man, the age of Sam Monson, can you Google his age for me? Because now I want to know. When you use those terms, like I jokingly will tongue-in-cheek sit here and say, as the kids say, because I'm 40, and I feel like I shouldn't be using the same verbiage and nomenclature as children. Now you've got Sam Monson, who is how old?
Oh, that's why he's a nerd. According to LinkedIn, he's from Cincinnati or lives in Cincinnati.
Oh, God. You know what's funny? In Cincinnati, so they just had to alert like 4 different districts in the Cincinnati area because some guy at the wastewater treatment facility, first of all, they only have one guy working 12-hour shifts overnight, and he died and fell in one of the water purification tanks. Like, he died, and he just floated in there for hours until they found him in the morning. So now all the water in 3 different counties in Ohio, including like a chunk of Cincinnati, is contaminated, and people have to boil their drinking water.
According to his LinkedIn, he has a bachelor's degree from Newcastle University, 2000 to 2004.
So he's probably only slightly older than me.
Yes.
You should not feel comfortable walking around using the terms like big mad. I don't know. I just think that's childish. I wonder, though, when you think about what makes Brandon Beane, here we go, Joe Fryer. I don't think Beane's sensitive. I think he's passionate about the team he works for. And you don't want that leader in your team. Exactly, Joe. Joe Fryer, everybody. This is the problem I have when people talk about sensitivity like it's a bad thing. No, he cares. He's dialed in, and he cares so much that when someone wrongfully disparages something he worked really hard on, he wants to go to the mat with you about it. He wants to say, look, how badly do you want to be in bed with me? Because I'll tell you what, that's an idiotic thing to just say out loud. I don't like the way you portrayed this. Either argue with me or recant. The same way he approached Jeremy White on the radio, where he just showed up and said, look, here's my opinion. Say your piece. I don't care. You've got a microphone, but I'm here to tell you I take umbrage to that. I don't mind my GM having a little bit of a backbone. Do you, Chris?
I want him to have a backbone. When
you think about some of the deals that he's signed, we joke about Big Baller Beane. We talk about, what have we called him over the years? The contractual gangster, Beane After Dark, all these things that he manages to get done that seem outlandish. When you go, how did he pull that off? It takes a passionate guy to kind of foist himself on other agents and kind of, I don't know, it's sounds bad when you say it like that, but to really impose his will on the people he's doing business with. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think you should want more of that in your franchise. I think that you should want a GM who, when there's one local media outlet who you do interviews with, and they feel really comfortable disparaging the work that you and your team have done for an entire offseason just because of a specific position group they're obsessed with, he feels very comfortable just coming out and on Main Street in front of everyone, calling them out on that. I like that. And not only do I like that, but then I think about this label of sensitive. The idea of being sensitive is not a bad thing when you think about he's the same GM who, if you're talking about him attacking people on the radio and him calling and threatening to pull business from PFF, he's also the same GM who's so sensitive that when Jordan Phillips left the team and went to the Cardinals and then suffered an injury, it wasn't tampering. He just reached out to his agent just to be like, look, man, is he okay? Like, is he doing okay? Is he as a person handling this injury and his current situation okay? Because I care about that guy. I think that Brandon Beane is so emotionally and personally invested in the game of football that it's difficult for him to separate that, right?
Yeah.
That's why you hear all these stories that come out in the aftermath of free agency. You know, we sat down with E.J. Snyder. E.J. Snyder from Bootleg Football was talking about how he's talked to plenty of agents. He's done a ton of interviews because he goes to the Combine every year. He said one of the craziest things that's a constant that he's heard without asking. He said sometimes it's completely unprompted. People will just talk about how great and refreshing it is to talk to Brandon Beane. Do you know why, Chris? Because he's transparent.
Mm-hmm.
He'll never lie to you. He cares. He cares enough that he's not going to lie to you. He's just going to tell you how things are. Whether you're an agent, whether you're another GM. Like, remember that clip? Some people have probably already forgotten it, from Hard Knocks last year. And
let's go eat a damn snack.
No, Brandon Beane would never. Have you seen him?
No.
Brandon Beane had a thing, and it seems like a small, innocuous throwaway interaction. But it's Joe Shane from the New York Giants. He's walking around. It's at a combine or one of the Senior Bowl workouts or something of that like. And he's walking around talking to other GMs, and he's actively shopping the Giants pick that they eventually used to take Malik Neighbors. And he's talking to other GMs about like, hey, so anybody interested in 9? Hey, whatever. And hey, Brandon. And all these other GMs are like, well, maybe we'll see. Well, I got to look at my things. I'll talk to you, just the passive aggressive, like not even passive aggressive, just the non-committal, but hey, we're all just. And then there's Brandon Beane, and when he gets to Brandon Beane, he goes, hey, Brandon, what about you? You think about number 9? What do you think about that? He looks at him and goes, I don't have enough picks right now. I don't have enough picks as it is. I got to figure this out. And then he just fucks off and goes about his business. Brandon Beane is a guy who is very transparent about what he thinks and feels. And if that rubs people the wrong way, I don't think he should be blamed for that. In fact, I think he should be applauded.
You know what I kind of think into that lane is, I don't know how much it happens with other teams because, I'm not invested with the other 31 teams in the NFL, but I think there is something to it with Beane's honesty with the amount of players that come back to Buffalo. He told Jordan Phillips, go test the market. Or who was
Shaq Lawson?
Shaq Lawson, go.
He said, "Look, we have an offer for you." He literally So Shaq Lawson opened up in an interview about his conversation with Brandon Beane, and he said, "Look, Beane sat me down in his office. He was really friendly. It was me, my agent. It was him." And he said, "Look, here's my number. I've got this number for you. I already have it set before the season's even over. This is what the number's going to be. I want you to know what the number is so that you can go out, and if you don't like it, you can test the market." And Shaq Lawson was kind of almost like caught off guard by that because he's like, well, let's negotiate. And Beane was like, no, I don't need to negotiate. This is my best and final, but I'm telling you, I don't want to try to hold you to it. I want you to either, if you can't get to that number and you want to see what else is out there, go see what else is out there. And the Dolphins came in with more money. And that's how it, and then look how his career arc went. You go sign for the Dolphins for more money. They don't care about you. You're just a bit piece. And when you don't pan out, they immediately ship you off to Houston. And then you get cut from Houston and you end up back on the Buffalo Bills roster playing against the New York Jets midway through a season. Like, that's not great.
Yeah, Dolphins, Texans, Jets, back to Buffalo, and then did Carolina.
Like, it's not great. But at least Beane was honest with him and said, look, I don't see you as a preeminent talent. I'm not going to offer you that kind of money. But I see you as this level of talent, and this is what I'm willing to pay for that because I think you have a place here. And as soon as he was available on the market, who was the first team to call him? Yep, the Buffalo Bills. And they said, hey, do you want some money? Do you want a job? Because I still believe in you and your talent level. There's a sensitivity that requires to have that conversation in a way. Because, Chris, think about how many bridges get burned during the course of those free agency negotiations with so many franchises. Look at what's happening.
Happens a lot.
Look at what's happening right now with Micah Parsons and the Cowboys, with Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals, with these rigid, uncaring structures at the helm of a team. Look at the Bengals are in incredible amount of trouble. It's almost unprecedented that a GM has its best proven pass rusher and the rookie they just drafted to replace said proven pass rusher, both at a contract standstill in the offseason of his, like, it's crazy to me.
But hey, they re-upped with their stadium deal or whatever. So go Cincinnati.
And so when I see that type of stuff and then I hear people call Brandon Beane sensitive, I go, hell yeah, my GM is sensitive. And I love it. You know why? Because people respect him for it. His source of respect around the NFL might hinge around the fact that he's transparent. He shows players the respect he thinks they deserve. And he talks to them like they're human beings. He just says, look, man, I'm sensitive. And I know you might be sensitive about this thing too. So let's talk like human beings instead of me trying to act like I'm Jerry Jones. And wasn't it Jerry Jones who famously said when people were, the Players Association complained about dome stadiums and the turf, like the all turf fields, the old school ones.
Yeah.
I think it was Jerry Jones. Someone fact check me on this who had the quote, they'll play on concrete if I tell them to.
It's impressive. Tank Ninja, I think telling off PFF is the type of thing that would have a positive impact on players just for how public-facing PFF is.
Sure. Being a GM who's like, hey, listen, PFF, you better shut your mouth. I respect that. I don't know why. It tickles me. And Cindy's team thesis equals who the hell needs defense? Yeah, that's the 2025 Cincinnati Bengals. We don't have a GM who sees things that way. He treats people like people. He treats staffers like staffers, and he treats them well. Look at, we did a podcast a few weeks ago where we talked about culture and how the Buffalo Bills have been able to hire an incredible number of staffers that have upward mobility. And in that way, you look at the tree that Brandon Beane has been able to create just in his short time in the NFL in terms of personnel members who have taken prominent roles with other franchises. That doesn't just happen from nowhere. He's a sensitive guy. He knows how to talk to people. And he puts together a really great crew of employees that allow him to do a lot of really great things. I think that it's hilarious to talk about this in a vacuum where you say, Brandon Beane's butthurt. Okay? I'm butthurt constantly. I'm angry and upset about things all of the time. It's probably because I'm a little sensitive. I want my GM to be that guy because it's clearly working. His sensitivity, whether it's players, whether it's people who work in his front office, whether it's people externally, outside the media maybe, Chris, like I said, maybe it's the media that's upsetting his staff. Maybe he saw that Matt Khalil thing, and it's the same way that he went after Jeremy White. He goes, my staff worked really hard on this. We worked really hard on this evaluation. It took us a lot of time to convince the GM to pull the trigger on this contract, and now you're going to come out and crap all over this? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think you're flawed, and I think you have a personal vendetta against this, and I think you need to shut your mouth and change it, or else. He's not afraid to challenge people when they need to be challenged. It takes a certain sensitivity to know when to do that.
I was going to bring out, another media adjacent related thing. Although while it wasn't Beane, it was more McDermott. You know, Tyler Dunn wasn't in the building for a minute, and then Beane and McDermott allowed him to come back in. He's done a couple of pieces on him.
So everyone goes, oh, they're sensitive. It's like, yeah, well, if he was really that sensitive, I think the thing that people don't understand, and if there's something you can take away from this portion of the podcast, there is a difference between sensitive and defensive. I know this because I'm both. I can be sensitive. I can have really heartfelt conversations with people. I'm also sometimes defensive. It's a character flaw. Where if you approach me with the slightest criticism, if I'm very sensitive about that topic, I will get defensive. Now, there's a difference between defensive and sensitive. Defensive means no matter what criticism you bring to my doorstep, even if I know that it has merit, I'll still act like you're doing something wrong because how dare you say this to me? Or I'll try to spin it or turn the conversation in a way that makes it either lessens your criticism or tries to cut the legs out from underneath it. Beane hasn't done any of that. Instead, he's just gone after people. He's gotten in their faces, and they don't seem to like that. I find that funny. Just as someone who has an aggressive personality, I find that funny. I think Brandon Beane's well within his right to be sensitive, and I think he's a better GM for having done it. Right?
100% agree with that.
What do you think when you hear that story in the office and you're a guy who works for him? How does that make you feel? Like Chris, have you ever had an experience where your boss went to the mat for you and you knew it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a time when I was CNC machining, I was at a shop and it was small. We had 3 CNC machines and then we were getting a 4th. And then I suggested, what would be helpful to me as a machinist is if we just box these CNC machines together with a giant table in the middle. That way I can just walk around the table and I can man all 4 CNC machines. And then my boss was like, that's a great idea. And then he bought the CNC machine and then had the company that came and put it in move the other 3 CNC machines for me. And I was only like 3 or 4 years into CNC machining. And I was just blown away that my boss listened to me. He was like, great idea. We'll do it. Oh, what? You listened to my idea and said it was a good idea and made it happen to make my work flow easier. Loved it.
And that's the type of thing where when you want to get mad, Steve Noble, Drew, are you going to punch me in the eye if I tell you messed up your steak next month at the SCA cook-off? Absolutely not, Steve, because I'll get defensive and I'll go, well, the sun was in my eyes and the sun was clearly hitting my grill and that's why it was hotter than I thought it was going to be. And so I screwed up the cook and I made it a little bit over medium. That's not my fault. No, Steve, that's how you get defensive. That right there is defensiveness. What I'll say is this. I think the idea that Brandon Beane is all of a sudden having his character come under attack this summer is a funny thing because the Buffalo Bills have been the most, we talked about it earlier on the pre-recorded show. The Bills have had an unprecedented run of success for a team in the AFC, especially the new AFC. When you think back to the 90s when the Bills made the Super Bowl 4 times in a row, how many great teams were there back then in the AFC, Chris? There was us, there was the Dolphins. Who else? Who else was really a contender in 1990?
Kansas City did trade for Joe Montana, but that was like...
How'd that work?
That lasted like 2 seasons.
Yep.
It was really, Kelly and Marino.
The 1990 AFC East standings. Bills, 13 wins. Dolphins, 12 wins. Colts, 7. Jets, 6. Patriots, 1-15. I wish I could have been cognizant of how much I hate that team then. Oh, my God. It's that idea that the 90s, what was there? And here's the Buffalo Bills in 2025, set to embark on another season where it almost looks like it's a kind of a foregone conclusion you're going to win the AFC East. What teams around you have mounted a challenge? And you think about this as a whole, I don't feel the Oilers. Okay. Oilers were a good team. Great team. It's kind of like it is now, where there was a whole bunch of mediocrity and 4 teams that were capable of coming out of the AFC. That was 1990. We're back there again, and we're doing the same thing. It's because we have good coaching. As much as saying that out loud hurts my soul, we have good coaching. We have a good GM who understands how to build a team and build relationship with agents and players. Think about the time we saved Matt Milano from hitting the free agent market at the 11th hour. And he almost took what looked like a discount to stay here. And then the very next year, he was an all-pro. That doesn't happen out of nowhere. Think about how many franchises, Chris, would have botched that move.
A lot.
We have a sensitive GM who knows how to read people, knows how to talk to people, knows how to cultivate relationships, and ultimately sold these players who keep coming back on team-friendly deals that, guess what? You want to be here. You want to be a part of this. When he went on his signing spree this offseason and decided that, hey, I'm not going to go big game hunting in free agency. I'm going to use my money to keep the young core pieces of what I see as the next Super Bowl run and the next Super Bowl window for Josh Allen. I kept them around and I got them to take fairly reasonable deals. Why? Because he's sensitive and he knows how to talk to people and cultivate the relationship with the player and the agent and the staff that supports those guys.
What was that deal he reworked with Milano?
It was right before they were going to hit free agency. Because,
No, I meant like for this year.
Oh, for this year. It turned into a 1-year deal and was like, look, man, we don't hate you. We just need cap flexibility. And Matt Milano, wants to be out on the street next year? But he agreed to it. It takes personality and people skills to have those conversations. To know that, hey, I'm not going to completely alienate Matt Milano while getting him to draft a contract that's very team friendly. He's going to be off my books next year because I convinced him it was a good idea. Do you think that happens in a vacuum? Like, I just asked him and he said yes because he was bored.
No, he probably talks to him.
You've cultivated a relationship and it takes sensitivity to do that. And if in order to continue having the success that we have as a franchise and all the contracts and all of the front office stuff that we currently enjoy, if I need a guy who will also go out there and yell at people in public when he feels like he's been wronged, hell yeah. In fact, not only do I want it, I support it whole hog. Chris, I'm in. Give me more of it. I think Beane should get a radio show where he just gets to give everybody the high heat.
I'd sign up for that.
You'd sign up for that?
Yeah. I mean, hey, fucking Jerry Jones has a radio show /segment. How many other GM/owners have that around the league?
Because he owns the station and he threatened to fire the hosts after they made fun of him. It's hilarious. It's Tank Ninja. It's like making love. It takes sensitivity and trust. Yes. Brandon Beane's out here making love. He's not being a GM. He's out here making love. Tank Ninja, I love that. I absolutely love it. The other thing I love is that this thing called Fanatics Fest happened this weekend. Switching gears, this thing called Fanatics Fest happened. And all the clips I saw of it on social media looked like absolute horse shit. Like, oh, here comes Tom Brady walking around with a fake championship belt like a WWF promo. And then all of a sudden, Eli Manning jumps out of the crowd and like jumps on his back, but doesn't really. Everyone's like, oh, it was so funny. He doesn't even really hit him. I want to see like a Goldberg spear. Now that would be funny, right?
Terry Tate, office linebacker.
If Eli Manning showed up at Fanatics Fest and Terry Tate, office linebacker Tom Brady, now I'm interested. Now I might buy a ticket to go see what's going on here. Reed Ferguson, I'm going to retweet it over at our Twitter handle at Rockpile Report. You can all go see it. He had a tweet about how everything at Fanatics Fest just feels so fake and forced. Right down to Kevin Durant just magically being on stage at Fanatics Fest when he finds out that he's been traded to the Houston Rockets. Like, it just feels, we just got done talking about how genuine our GM is and how he feels and his sensitivity and why that's palatable to people. And now you're dealing with something that's so the opposite. It's so plastic and fake feeling. In this, like, hey, you're a fan of sports? Come to Fanatics Fest. Woo, you can get some autographs. First of all, I'm not going to disparage anybody who likes collecting autographs. I'm not going to. I will say I own one piece of autographed memorabilia. Exactly one. Do you know what it is, Chris?
Hulk Hogan.
Nope. It sits on the mantle behind my bar. I own an autographed photo of Joe Pesci. One of the greatest afternoons of my young childhood. I got Joe Pesci. He like pulled an 8x10 out of the trunk of his car and just signed it. Just says, God is good. It was like, holy shit, that's the guy. Like, that guy's in movies. He's from Home Alone. I know this guy. It's Fanatics Fest strikes me as the thing that would pull together nothing. It's almost like, Chris, I'm going to say this and people are going to get mad. I'm watching what's going on in the comments, and I don't even care about Fanatics Fest anymore. Right now, people are talking about podcasts. Buddy Nix 100% deserves a podcast, and Chris has offered to produce it. They'll call it the Big Holler Bean Show. Could you imagine the Terry Pagula podcast? No, I could not. They let him talk on NFL Network for 1 second. Ryan Lasel and I sat here on this podcast and joked about it. If you put Terry Pagula behind a microphone, there are fans like me who don't like the fact that Terry Pagula hasn't publicly addressed us, the media, about the Buffalo Bills in years. And then when he finally does, it's this super canned and really awkward report about the new stadium. And you realize maybe Terry Pagula just can't speak. Like, unless you give him a prepared speech, he might just be a pumpkin. And that's a problem. Don't put a microphone in front of him. He'll just show his ass. Get him out of here. Put him back behind the curtain. I don't need to see any more of him. Maybe it was right to make Kim Pagula the face of this thing for as long as she was.
Terry Pagula podcast, he would just be called Terry from Buffalo. Well, that one time he called into GR on the whatever Saturday morning show Shope was doing.
Here's what I love. I love the idea that our owner is kind of a rube. I love it. Like, it hasn't impacted the Bills only because our sensitive GM, Brandon Beane, and head coach didn't allow it. They've boxed out the owner influence from this franchise, and it's literally them running the show from top to bottom.
Do you have Joe Pesci lounge albums?
If he has a lounge album, I will get it. Oh my God. Oh my God. Christopher, you have you get Christopher, email me therockpowreport@gmail.com. I need to know more about these lounge albums because I'm going to get every single one of them. He's the man. I love having that autograph photo just sitting behind my bar because people come in, they're on like their second drink and they look up and they go, wait a minute, is that really, did he sign that? I go, yeah. Yeah, it's a signed framed photo of Joe Pesci. It's a conversation starter. Just like Terry Pagula having a podcast. Can you imagine the dumb things that would roll out of his mouth?
It would have to be seriously edited.
You would have to be redacting it the way that Ron Swanson redacted his medical history in an episode of Parks and Rec.
Yes. Terry would have, like, he would do a sentence, or maybe not even complete a sentence, and then there'd be 2.5 to 3 seconds of dead air. Then he would finish the sentence, and it would just be a ton of editing to make sentences sound together.
Steve Noble, Terry's podcast will be called Tire Fire Sports, sponsored by Michelin to make a buck. I do like this. Guys, I love it. Keep bringing the heat. I like the fact that we can all punch down on our owner, even though we love our football team. And I think because of a lot of it's what happened on the hockey side of things. Like, I wanted to make fun of Fanatics Fest and the fact that Tyreek Hill called the Buffalo Bills a bunch of bitches for playing cover 4. But it might be more interesting to have this conversation. Guys, for those of us who are old enough to understand the Tom Golisano comparison when it comes to the Buffalo Sabres, luckily the Buffalo Bills have boxed Terry Pagula and his family's influence out of the team. And it's its own thing now. It's its own organism that runs with the GM and coach at the top of the mountain. An owner who's willing to just shut up and cut whatever checks he needs to cut to give them what they need to get their jobs done. And a whole bunch of people who really have faith in these two guys. You take a look at the Sabres by comparison, which is the thing that has the Pegula's fingerprints, like I think more so all over it. And it's a disaster. It's an abject disaster. And so in this way, I told some of my friends this week that the Buffalo Sabres are existing inside of the gilded Golisano era, where when Tom Golisano took over the team, he did it because he felt like he had to so they wouldn't move, not because he actually gave a damn about being a hockey owner. And so he did what guys who don't really give a damn do. He barely funded it. The team didn't spend a ton of money on free agents. Like, they existed, but they weren't.
But they were good.
But they were good. That's the scary thing. They were good during the reign of an owner who didn't care whether or not he owned the team. And then Golisano sold the team to the Pegulas. And the Pegulas came in and said, this is going to be hockey heaven. We're going to spend a fortune. It's going to be awesome. We're going to make all this stuff happen. And we're only going to strive for winning a cup every year that we exist. And the fans, like the rubes we are, we cheered and we clapped and we, did you remember Guy from Eastbound and Down? And he's like the plebeians, the normies. He goes, you're out there just clapping because you see bright lights. Guy Young. You're just out there clapping because you see bright lights. That was us when Terry Pegula bought the Sabres. You look back at it now and it's laughable because they've made every mistake you can make as a franchise owner. They literally didn't hire. They didn't even interview for the GM job for Kevin Adams. And then when he got hired, said, hey, guys, we're going to moneyball this thing. We're going to take a new advanced approach to running a streamlined scouting process and all this stuff. All they were doing was cutting salary because they didn't want to pay for anything. So they ran the cheapest organization in hockey, and they're bearing the fruit of that. And it's terrifying that this was supposed to be the time when things went really well for the Sabres because they have rich owners who supposedly cared about the team. And instead, you're getting worse results than Tom Golisano's era, where he didn't care. He was just like, look, I'm keeping it here in Buffalo because it's good for the economy and it's good for the local area. I don't care whether they're good or not. The GM, Darcy Regier, can do whatever the hell he wants. I don't care. It's a hilarious dichotomy.
Yeah, but then he buys the Bills and then we're good.
Well, he bought the Bills, put all of his resources into that. Now, Chris, this is something we can talk about. You want to talk about the cheapness of our owner and how you should be happy that your GM, Brandon Beane, is sensitive to things and that he bristles when he feels like he's being challenged. Brandon Beane is talked about as the guy who basically engineered their contracts. Their contracts, Chris, don't exist anywhere else in the NFL. Terry Pegula has the power to fire Brandon Beane. He has the power to fire Sean McDermott. You know what he doesn't have the authority to do? Inject his opinion on anything roster related, draft pick related. They're like, listen, Terry, we allow you to be in the room. You don't work here. The Pegula family is essentially boxed out of all operations of football. And it's like it's legally enforceable. If they tried to overstep and Sean McDermott was pushed out, he could sue and they would settle with him out of court. Like, that's how that would go. They could fire him for and he could say, well, you overstepped because of X, Y, and Z. Boom. They'd settle with him. Chris, depending on how much time is left on Sean McDermott's contract, if and when he gets fired, there'll be a lawsuit.
I think with Pegula, he grew up being a season ticket holder for the Sabres, and I think he has he thinks that he has the knowledge to input his say into the Sabres, but I think he might have, with the Bills, he might have,
I think
he doesn't know that world enough.
Well, I think he saw his first hire.
I think he lucked into McDermott and
for sure, and I think he watched his first hire in Rex Ryan. He saw that he got bamboozled badly by Rex Ryan. And then here comes this unassuming just, hey, we're going to work hard and we're going to dig deep and we're going to make this happen. And oh, by the way, I know a guy who could be the best GM in the NFL if you just give him a job. And I need him in order to, like, how much was that pitch of Sean McDermott being like, hire me? All right, well, if I'm in and you're not on board with Whaley, let me tell you about a guy I know who will be the next great GM because he's sensitive and he cares about things and people and he cultivates great relationships. And he sometimes calls PFF and cusses him out. Let me tell you about my friend Brandon. And then they fire Doug Whaley as soon as the draft's over and they go, hey, Brandon, get in here. Help me fix this mess. Terry Pegula took his hands off the wheel once he had to. And look at what it's done for the Bills franchise. And now the problem is that like the Paterka trade that everyone's angry about this week. This kind of, it's almost like a teaser for the stadium show we're going to do with Ryan Lasel after the 4th of July. But it's the concept that when you look at all the trade offers that existed for J.J. Paterka for the Sabres took the cheapest option, the one that would ultimately cost the least amount of money. Now, Chris, do you think it's a coincidence that the Sabres are running the cheapest? They're never spending to the salary cap. They're just trying to exist and keep butts in seats and keep things afloat. They've already opted out, Chris. They said they're not going to be like, you look at what happened to the Amerks and with that building. Do you know what happened in Rochester?
I just know that the Amerks re-upped the lease and the Nighthawks are out.
They re-upped the lease. The Pegulas called. As soon as the Bandits won the NLL title, the next day the Pegula family called the NLL offices and Pete Whaley basically said, hey, guys, we're no longer interested in owning the Nighthawks. So you need to go out as a league and go find another owner. We don't want them. Why? Because they cost money and we don't want to spend it. Then they reached out and told the city of Rochester, guess what? We're not interested in running the building anymore. We're not going to be the owners of it. We're not going to maintain it. We're not going to do anything. We just want to be tenants. So they helped broker a deal to move whatever, Blue Cross Blue Shield Arena. Is that what it's called?
I think it's Blue Cross Arena.
Whatever it is. That is now owned by like a venue management company. It's not owned by the city and it's not owned by the Pegulas, and the maintenance and upkeep and their upgrades. None of it's anybody's responsibility. It's between the city and that team now. The Pegulas got themselves out of that deal. Now they just rent. And then you look at what's happening here in Buffalo, where the Sabres informed Erie County that they have no interest in that building. They're going to walk away from it and put that back in the hands of Erie County and say, hey, guess what? All this talk about how we were going to build hockey heaven, that was great until I tried to build a new football stadium. And then somehow got pulled into a deal where I'm paying all the cost overruns, and New York State only chipped in, what, Chris, like $800,000, $800 million?
Something like that.
$600 million? I'm paying the cost, and everything's skyrocketing and going to shit, so I'm paying extra labor to get overtime work done. Chris, remember when now the things leaked about how the stadium might not be fully complete by the time the season starts?
Yeah.
Pegula is paying millions of dollars in overtime to laborers to get that thing done. This is a cheap franchise if the Pegulas are allowed to run it. We should, like the Sabres fans who are mad at the Paterka trade, should not be shocked that this is happening to you. Your owner is a renowned cheapskate when it comes to anything that's not the Buffalo Bills, because that's his cash cow. They are on their way, the Pegulas, to being the Brown family that owns the Bengals, in that they only own a football team and that is their only successful business venture. This is just another example of that, where out of all the potential trades that they could have made for J.J. Paterka that could have made the Sabres better, they opted for the one that cost the least because of all these Bills-related costs that they're having to foot. And it does raise the question, do you, at some point, start to call for Terry Pegula to just sell the damn team?
Yeah, I mean, well, you still got Bo Byram to trade. So there, who knows, like, I'll believe it, your thesis of if it's a cheap trade. But I still think that Bo Byram gets traded for maybe I don't know if they could get Jordan Kyra from St. Louis with them, but, you know, I don't know what we're doing talking hockey on a football podcast.
I'm trying to underscore for you how unique it is that the Buffalo Bills are the only franchise that doesn't kowtow to its owner. Do you want to know why? Because Brandon Beane is our fucking GM. Brandon Beane has carried so much water for us as fans. And Chris, we all give Sean McDermott grief.
Yeah, we do.
How many people are mad at Brandon Beane?
Not a lot.
Didn't he win Executive of the Year?
Maybe.
Google that. Fact check me on this.
Call in if you know.
So the idea that you think it's okay to come onto a radio show and try to assassinate the character, or like you think, oh, I'm going to have a funny quip for these guys because they're local.
2020.
Yep. So you're going to go onto a local radio station as Sam Monson, and you're going to try to assassinate the character of a guy who that fan base and that franchise owes literally everything it has. This is the GM that convinced everybody to pull the trigger on Josh Allen. This is the GM who's made a lot of ballsy moves in terms of trades, trading for Stephon Diggs. Somehow has been able to negotiate fair market contract after fair market contract in a way that's almost unprecedented. None of them are splashy moves, but they all go on to be great players. He runs a scouting department that's been able to find these $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a year players that go on to show out for the Buffalo Bills the way Mac Hollins did last year. And then they get rid of that guy because they're like, oh, we went and found something else. And we pivoted because I've built such a great staff. How dare you think that you can show up and attack that guy at a time when I'm watching my owner run the other franchise in our city into the ground, and I go, Brandon Beane is all I have. I have Brandon Beane to thank for every single thing that I enjoy about Buffalo sports. And it's not lost on me, Chris, that Brandon Beane carved out a niche for himself and then fought Terry Pagula into a point where he had to give it to him. He probably had a similar conversation that he had with PFF with Terry Pagula. Hey,
I believe that.
I see what's going on over here at PSC. Don't you dare let that shit come over here and pollute what we're doing in our billing. I'm going to make it contractual that you keep your shit on your side of the aisle and you let me stay over here and keep making you millions of dollars. I love it. I love that we have a sensitive GM. I love that it's summertime and I just hate that there's no sports. I can't wait for the day when there's real football to talk about again.
1 month.
Can't get here fast enough. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we got to get the hell out of here. Thank you so much for everybody who showed up tonight, everybody who participated. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger.